Well, good morning everybody, and today is the second day of our journey and our Christmas break in Devon, the land of my forefathers. Even though I'm born and brought up in London, I do consider myself a bit of a West Country boy at heart. The bestest place ever, absolutely. What's that hat you've got on there? Oh, it's a fox. Ah. We were a bit worried last night because where we're staying on the farm, they let fox in to feed the animals. So they let fox in the chicken coop, which is never a good idea with foxes, you know that. Did you go to the chicken coop last night?
No.
He did, no, this morning he did,
Ducks
didn't he?
Geese, not chickens.
Oh no, ducks and geese, I beg your pardon. Either.
Yeah.
You say ducks, I say chickens.
Yeah.
Collect their eggs, exactly. You didn't, did you get...
We collected 8 geese eggs.
You did collect 8 geese eggs. There's a Christmas song in there somewhere. Anyway, we are now on our way to Berry Pomeroy Castle, where we will be eventually if Hazel's just lost us completely. But anyway, we're on our way to Berry Pomeroy Castle this morning, and Berry Pomeroy Castle, I'm hoping maybe get a little bit of an interview with maybe one of the staff there, just to have a chat about the paranormal history of it, because it's got a fantastic paranormal history attached to it. It's reputed to be a very, very haunted building. In fact, probably one of the most haunted buildings in England or Britain. But I'm sure there's a lot of places vying for that top slot, and a lot of them will tell you that they are when they generally aren't. But yes, so we're on our way to Berry Pomeroy Castle. I'll give you a potted history of the paranormal activity that has gone on there, and then we'll just take a look at it. Yes, there are. A lot of white cars, there you go. So yeah, I'll see you when we get there. So the castle itself has been here since the late 15th century, so late 1400s, and it was held by the Pomeroy family from the 1100s. And Margaret Pomeroy is reputed to be the spirit, or the white lady spirit, that inhabits the grounds and the castle itself. But I think there's also a grey lady there as well. But more about that when we get there, hopefully. So the legend goes, the story goes, that Margaret Pomeroy had an elder sister who was called... Right, so the legend goes that Margaret Pomeroy had a sister called Eleanor, and they fell in love with the same man. And Eleanor was jealous of her sister's beauty and the fact that they were vying for the love of the hand of the same gentleman. So what she did is Eleanor imprisoned Margaret in the castle and starved her to death. And a spirit is said to be felt going up a stairwell to the eternal cell, the cell that she was kept in and the cell that she was starved to death in. And it is said that many people have felt the spirit of Margaret brush past them on the stairwell. So we'll see if we can get any connection with Margaret when we get there, and we'll see if there's any more legends and hauntings attached to the castle. There is one of 2 brothers that held the castle, and they were being raided, and what they did is they blindfolded their horses and they basically went into battle, the 2 brothers, against an army, and they flushed the army out over the ramparts to their death. So that's another legend that's attached to this castle. And you know what it is, where there's a legend, where there's a myth or a fairy tale, there's generally a grain of truth behind it, because that's where they emanate from. So we'll speak more of that in a bit. There you go, Berry Pomeroy Castle. The ruins are left, the old gatehouse. So we are here at the haunted castle. See if we can find the white lady. So there you go. You can just see that shadow of it, the glimpsing through the trees there like some sort of spectre waiting to pounce. Typical Devon weather, pouring a rain. But what a fantastic place. And the grounds coming in are just beautiful. I'll give you a little bit of a sweeping. You can't really see much, but through those bushes and trees, you just got sweeping vistas. It's beautiful. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to give you sort of an idea of the layout. There's a little cafe there, Castle Cafe, and this is the lane or the road that runs into it. So you can see it's very, very rural. It's the middle of nowhere and it's very beautiful. And then that way, where the kids and Hazel and her dad are coming from and her mum, that's where the car park is. And the castle there is adjacent to it. Willow's doing her show dog stance. Got Lily here. Lily's the white lady. Lily, are you the white lady? So we're going through the gatehouse now into what was the castle, the remains of the castle. And I'll sit down and tell you something in a minute. I will. Wow. So Fox has been desperate to drag me in here. I believe there's like a garden in here, an opening for a toilet. Look at that floor. Imagine the feet that have gone over that throughout history. Look at this. I'm standing smack bang on history. So I'm in here on my own at the moment. They're outside. Where's the garden loo? Oh, it's down there. Let's have a walk up here. I'm on my own. Let's have a look. There you go. Can't really see it, but an old toilet there. I wonder if this is the stairs that went up to the eternal prison cell of poor Margaret Pomeroy. And then back around again. An arrow slit. Back this way. Back into the main area. Just beautiful. So I spoke to the chap at the main gate about maybe giving me a little bit of potted history of the spirits of and the hauntings of Berry Pomeroy Castle. And he said there's lots of hoops to jump through with national heritage, or with English heritage rather, regarding getting one of the staff to talk. You have to go through a whole melee of different hoops that you had to jump through. So he did furnished me with this book, which is the old guidebook. He gave it to me for nothing. And I want to read you an excerpt or a little bit of a story here about the hauntings, or maybe one or two. So let's take these off. Terrible, taking my glasses off to read. Where are we? Here you go. So, sorry about that. So it says here, the earliest ghost story which I can trace is the well-known one of the visit of Dr. Farquhar to tend to a sick woman at the castle. Sorry about the car, braving up in the background. Probably in the 1790s. The story is perhaps the best known of all and will be dealt with presently. It has the ring of authenticity and was written down in his memoirs by this eminent physician. So this takes us back about 2 centuries. There are quite a few other stories from responsible witnesses, and they take us roughly up to, bearing in mind, turning page. Sorry about that. Take us roughly up to the time of the Great War. The stories which approach our times, however, do not seem to have the same authority as the earlier ones, and border on the sensational, which is what happens with a lot of ghost stories. But as I say, there's always a grain of truth in them. But particularly in the Victorian period, and I'm not reading this, I'm just going to tell you off sort of hand, particularly in the Victorian periods. They were very apt to love a ghost story with the Victorians. They absolutely wallowed in it. They just loved it. And of course, the ghost stories started out with the original ghost story, something that was fact. And then by the time it had gone through Victorian hands, it had turned into something astronomical. It's something completely different than what it started with, but still with that grain of truth. And I think this is the story of Dr. Farquhar. Anyway, the stories which approach our times, however, do not seem to have the same authority as the earlier ones and border on the sensational. Already said this. One writer has copied another over the years, and the same stories have been repeated ad nauseum. Mediums have visited Bury from time to time and poured forth exaggerated stories of their experiences to the press. The AA's excellent Book of British Villages, 1980 for instance, states 1,000 years of history lie behind the castle's grim and forbidding gatehouse, the entrance to a site often described as one of the most haunted in Britain. Change hands. Sorry about this. Right, okay. The ghosts are said to prowl the walls, staircases and dungeons of the castle. Much in a similar vein has been written over the years, and it seemed to me that perhaps it amounted to very little. Were the hauntings fading? Was the remembrance of them all that was left? Then I began to delve deeper, and to get away from what had been written. I visited people who lived close at hand and had done for long years. Immediately I began to get results. For many such could give me first-hand information of what had happened to themselves or their friends. It was really quite astonishing, for I found that not only the old castle, but also the surrounding countryside has its share of psychic phenomena, particularly the Gatecombe Valley just below the ruins. As a result of this investigation, one is forced to conclude there has been no lapse in paranormal occurrences at Bury after all, so it's a continual thing. The stories which I myself have investigated, I now relate and will deal with the older ones towards the end of the chapter. Okay, so I'm going to skip a bit and see what I can get. So this is one about a guy called Mr. Ellis. Mr. Ellis was milking one evening at dusk in an outbuilding of the mill. He saw what he thought to be his nephew repeatedly dodging in and out of the cows and disturbing them. Finally, he shouted at him to stop, but the figure disappeared. On entering the house, he found that his nephew had never been outside at all, and the figure was hooded but resembled his nephew in build and height. Number 3, Mrs. Ellis. Mrs. Ellis related to me how a few years ago a clergyman and his wife and daughter, who was aged about 18, visited the castle. They entered by the gatehouse, whereupon the daughter suddenly cried out and fainted. She was assisted to the nearby tea room, where Mrs. Ellis happened to be. The girl was brought round and said she had seen the sudden apparition of a young woman dressed in blue who had beckoned to her from the gateway. She was so frightened by this that she had fainted. Now, the ghost of the woman in blue is one of the older stories of the castle and will be mentioned later. Mrs. Ellis suggested to the girl that it was all in her imagination and that she had been reading about the castle and its ghosts. But the father assured her that until about a quarter of an hour before, they had never heard of the castle of Bury Pomeroy. They had noticed a signpost and thought just on the spur of the moment that they would go there. Animals have been disturbed by the castle atmosphere. Mr. Ellis's Alsatian bitch, for instance, can never be persuaded to go up to the castle, although she likes to walk as much as any other dog. Well, Lily clearly has been walking around the castle, and she does show no sign of fear or trepidation whatsoever. So you can make of that what you will. Another story told by Mrs. Rowden, who with her husband lived at the castle lodge for many years. She said that in September each year, a couple, now elderly, always visit the castle. They first went there on their honeymoon at that time of the year. When going along the rampart walk towards St. Margaret's Tower, their dog suddenly went mad with fear and dashed off. They themselves were surrounded by an icy blast and sense of chill. Though frightened, they stood their ground, hoping they might see something, but nothing appeared. Each year of their lives, they have revisited the spot in September, but have never felt or seen anything. Mrs. Rowden also related that in the valley below the mill, there was a wooden footbridge over the brook. Here, many people have seen an old lady in quaint old-fashioned garments. She's always in the centre of the bridge and is not at all alarming. So I'm not going to bang on about the ghosts and the hauntings of Pomeroy, because there's a whole guy's written a thesis, and this book is by Bury Pomeroy Castle by Derek Seymour and Jack Hazard. It's a great book. The guy actually gave this one to me because this is the outdated one, but still in all, there's a lot of information on the castle, general history and paranormal history. So it's worth looking up and grabbing a copy of this if you can. It's at $3.95, and the new one is probably a similar price. The new one's updated, so there's a lot of history that they've learned about the castle just recently, because they've been doing excavations here, and they've ploughed up a lot more history and put pieces of the picture together. So let's have a look around and see what we can see. But that's just a little potted history, a few little stories about the castle, just to give you a little bit of a flavour and to see, you know, a little bit of what's gone on here prior to us. Another thing about the castle as well is, I believe I was just talking to Hazel's dad, and he was talking to me about the film called the Stone Tape Theory, which is, I think I spoke to you before, that anything dramatic or anything horrific that happens in the area, or anything that's repetitive, like say a guard walking up and down, what happens is that the materials, the crystallization in the materials and the silica records it. And then at the right time, the right environment, the right weather, the right person, it unlocks it and it replays. And, you know, it's interesting to know that the same stuff in the building materials and the fabric of these buildings, the silica and the crystallization, is also used in the making of tape, audio tape and videotape, because it records. So why can't it be doing a similar thing? You know, that would be an answer to some of the hauntings, I would imagine, as that is the case in a lot of places. But overall, I would think that a lot of the spirits here are what we would call real-time. These are spirits that are active, and they are intelligent, and they are interacting with not only their surroundings but the people there as well. So there we go. Anyway, enough of spirits. Let's have a look around. So we've got the courtyard here, and there is the main body of the building of the castle, and we'll go and see what else we can see. So this is inside now, looking up at the ramparts. All the way around. It's a very interesting building. As I say, the thing with ghost hunting and the thing with history is they go hand in glove. They are, you know, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. And that's the thing about ghost hunters. Proper ghost hunters, real ghost hunters, have this real passion for history, because you're dealing with it. Every time you make or try and make connection with a spirit, in effect, you're dealing with history, and you're trying to learn stuff from it. Not just about the afterlife, but in my case, and a lot of paranormal investigators' case, about the particular time period that the spirit emanates from. There you go. Oh, lovely, beautiful. Right, so we're now leaving Berry Pomeroy Castle. Hope you enjoyed that. And little excerpts of history, paranormal history that I gave you. I hope they meet a good standard.
It was fun.
It was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, very fun.
Excellent. Do you see any ghosts?
No.
No.
Really.
Only the white spectre of the one called Lily. Right, so yeah, so thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. It's really, really raining. It's typical sort of Devon. It's pouring down. But yeah, great fun. I'll speak to you on the next one. Very rainy. See you later.